Soapbox After Dark. And as you know, with Soapbox After Dark, pants and sobriety are completely and entirely optional. It is your choice. It's up to you. Blaze one if you got one. This is not necessarily a 420 episode, but it's After Dark. We're doing the news. Let's have some fun. I may not tarry on this because I have like 6 stories that I want to get to before tonight is over with. And it is already 7:24. So I need to get moving. So I may not necessarily stay long on this, but there is one more of these that I want to show, maybe 2, for Bernie Sanders at the CNN Town Hall. Some of the points were interesting. I mean, they asked Bernie Sanders about supporting, will he support the Democratic nominee? Bernie Sanders says yes. If the Democratic nominee, whoever it is, he'd support him. And if I'm not mistaken, they're contractually obligated to do so, just like they were in the last election. When people said that there was some kind of deal or arrangement made, the deal and arrangement was just you support the person who wins. But nevertheless, let's take a look at this. Sanders is asked a very interesting question. Make the case for democratic socialism. Now, the woman says socialism because most people I don't think they see the difference. They just hear socialism, that's the buzzword. But Sanders wanted to make the clear political distinction of democratic socialism. This is done in democratic means. There's no imposed system in this way. It's hard to get across how wild this is. Like, the people who were around in 2008 when Obama got elected, think about the things that they were talking about in that election. Think about how far the range of debate that was set within regards to that particular election, and compare it to this one. You have Democratic candidates that are out talking in front of audiences about reparations. Now the question becomes, what does reparations mean? I have no idea what that means. And it's somewhat of a loaded word because it can mean somewhat all sorts of things depending upon who you're talking to. To some people, it may mean a check in the mail to people who are descendants of slaves. To others, it may mean some kind of social program, like affirmative action. It just kind of depends on what it means. But the fact that they're using the term in the first place in order to try to woo African Americans back is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's mind-blowing that this is taking place. Now, whether they mean it or not is a separate question, but the fact that they're bringing it up gets across a certain degree of desperation. In the standpoint of socialism, this country, and you can hear Richard Wolff give this, and God, I wish Richard Wolff could be on the show for this. This country was walled off with regards to socialism. Like, when the United States was in that kind of war with the Soviet Union, this Cold War, everything that was deemed a little red was deemed bad and negative because it was in the context of a war. You know, these guys are communists, socialists. They're outing communists, meaning the McCarthy era. Like, this created somewhat a wall on the door in regards to how far to the left somebody can go, because at a certain point, you didn't necessarily want to be considered a commie. This made it difficult for the left. The Democratic Party at that point was as far as you can go because the communists and socialists, those parties, were entirely destroyed. Not to mention, in this case, this kind of slow asphyxiation of the unions in this country. So the idea that there's a person who's standing in front of an audience, who's looking out to the audience and speaking out to the American public to the tune of millions, and is saying, yes, I'm a democratic socialist, and this is why I'm a democratic socialist, and let me make this point to the American public. That is an amazing thing. And to some degree, it gets across a certain degree of failure, or acknowledged failure, of the capitalistic system in the way that it's configured. I just find this is amazing. This is historic. Whether Sanders wins or not, Sanders is the front runner of a contest, and he's running in that contest as an unabashed democratic socialist and running hard to the left without any hedge. He's telling you what he wants to do. I'm sorry. I find this to be absolutely amazing, and maybe I'm maybe this gets across a certain degree of ridiculousness about politics, but it is what it is. So she's going to ask him about democratic socialism.
Simple, persuasive case as to why socialism is preferable to capitalism.
Democratic socialism, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let me tell you what I mean by that so we're clear. Right now, we have a nation which prides itself on a lot of political rights. In other words, under the Constitution, thank God you have freedom of speech. Media can do its thing, even though Trump calls you an enemy of the people. How does that feel to be an enemy? That's another story. All right. I won't question Wolf.
You don't think we are, though?
No, I don't. Okay. I certainly do not. So we have political right, freedom of religion, and all of that is enormously important. But you know what we don't have? We don't have guarantees regarding economic rights. And way back in 1944, in a little known, a little publicized State of the Union speech, Franklin Delano Roosevelt said something, and I'm paraphrasing him, but he said, you know, when we talk about human freedom and rights, we've got to understand that everybody needs a decent paying job, that people need health care, that people need education. And all over the world, these ideas are taking place. You go to countries in Scandinavia, of course, health care is a right. Higher education is free. They have strong preschool programs. They make sure that their elderly folks can retire in dignity. These are not radical ideas. So what democratic socialism means to me is having in a civilized society the understanding that we can make sure that all of our people live in security and in dignity. Healthcare is a human right. All people should have healthcare. You can't get ahead in this country, in this world, unless you have a decent education. We have got to, as a right, end the kinds of discrimination, the racism and the sexism and the homophobia that exist. So to me, when I talk about democratic socialism, what I talk about are human rights and economic rights.
Senator, President Trump said in his State of the Union address, and I'm quoting him now.
Before going to Wolf Blitzer, understand what he's saying here. Even if in society you're considered free, you're not equal without some level of economic wealth. I mean, you know, what is the perspective of somebody who's poor in a society where people deify the rich? You know, that perspective is not necessarily a great perspective. A kid who's born in a poor neighborhood, who's dodging bullets, has a materially different life than somebody who's not. There's a disadvantage inherent into that particular position that that person is in. In order for you to be free, when we're using this concept free, that's not necessarily the free to open a business. What it means freedom is your ability to grow as a human being. At least that's what it means to me. Your ability to get an education, to get healthcare when you need it. Those things are things that you need, that you require as a person just to propagate yourself through life. Something to do, meaning a skill or trade or something to add yourself into the collective, into the whole. Meaning, I guess you can say purpose of sorts that's created. Of course, clean air, food, water, shelter. Those things are necessary for a human to be a human being. And that person suffers when those things are not necessarily there for that person to partake of, nor can that person claim to be free if that person don't have those things in order to operate in. It's like, yeah, the society considers you free from the standpoint of a legal definition. By the same token, you're dying by cancer outside on the hospital steps because you can't afford the hospital. Or you can't afford the drug, or you can't afford your insulin medication, or you can't afford to live in a house that's not necessarily ridden with rats. I'm just saying, freedom requires that a person have those things that allow them to live a life, a basic, decent life. And one last point, the retiring with dignity thing. I think that's a big deal. And for some reason, I'm not quite sure why. Oh, I know why. The people in this society work from the time, you know, that they're young to the time that they're old and die. And when you look at somebody who's spent their entire life in this way, meaning us, just human beings, it seems blatantly unfair that they can work the entirety of their life and the society doesn't take care of them. Ultimately, the society was enhanced and bettered by whatever skill and trade that this particular person was doing. Whatever labor that person was doing. If that person had a job, somebody needed that person to have a job. Or if that person had a business, somebody benefited from it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have a business. It's like, you know, the size of a fish is determined by the prey that's in the water, meaning how much you can eat. Yeah, that's a bad example, but it's kind of right, but it's a bad example. But you get my point. I hope you get my point. Like, ultimately, well, let's go to the second part. I'm belaboring this point, and I already said I'm going to try to keep this short. The retiring with dignity. I'll do it. I'll say it. The retiring with dignity part, for some reason, a big deal to me. My aunt, who worked her entire life, it never occurred to me. I can be somewhat wrapped in myself. It not self-centered per se, but I orient myself around the world based on me, even though I project that out to the rest of the world. I mean, it's like a certain compassion because I look at myself. If I was in that situation, how would I feel about it? But somewhat wrapped in my own thing. In this case, doing the news or marriage or whatever. And I was having a conversation with a family member, and they were talking about my aunt. And they were talking about the place that she was living. And it never occurred to me that she would be in a situation where she was stuck somewhere because the income that she had, the Social Security, whatever, wasn't sufficient for her to live anywhere else. Like you can work the entirety of your life, and then at the very end of your life, after society uses all of the labor that you've put forth and all of the output and all of the things that you've done for that particular society, at the end where you're getting older and you can no longer do what you've done, the society abandons you to some degree. I mean, Social Security helps, yes, but let's be honest, Social Security is completely inadequate. And I understand people make the argument, well, Social Security isn't supposed to be X or Y. Social Security can be whatever you want. It's our society. We can make those choices. But the fact of the matter is you have a lot of people who are living on those checks as the only thing to live on. I'm just saying, it seems wrong. It seems a foul thing to say, thank you for your labor, but at the point where you can no longer do it for yourself, that, kick rocks, you're done. Let's hear the secondary point. Wolf Blitzer is going to make a point. Let's hear what Wolf Blitzer has to say.
America, this is the president. America will never be a socialist country. Will that hold true if you're elected president?
If I am elected president, we will have a nation in which all people have health care as a right, whether Trump likes it or not. We are going to make public colleges and universities tuition free. We are going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage of at least $15 an hour. And whether Trump likes it or not, when I talk about human rights, you know what that also means? It means that our kids and grandchildren have the human right to grow up in a planet that is healthy and habitable. And it is really a disgrace and an embarrassment that we have a president who rejects science, who does not even understand that climate change is real and caused by human activity, who does not understand what this planet will look like in years to come if we do not go forward boldly and transform our energy system away from fossil fuels.
Let's continue with climate change right now. Michelle Gregory.
God, I like that answer. Love that answer. Love that answer. I can watch Sanders do this all day. It's like, I don't care what you call it. I don't care what you call it. I don't care what the label is. What does it do? Like, how does it operate in the real world? What is the thing that's taking place? What are the changes that are taking place? And what are the effects those are going to have as they propagate out through time? Like, that's what I care about. If healthcare lowers the cost of healthcare, lowers the cost of drugs, and provides high-quality healthcare to the people in the country, then the outcome, to me, is better than what was there prior. In which case, yeah, I want to go for that particular outcome. I don't care what you call that. Fact of the matter is, most countries around the world are mixed economies. There's some parts where the government takes hold. There's some parts where private enterprise takes hold. Most governments are mixed economies. The United States is no different. I mean, hell, military is socialism on steroids. Medicare, Social Security. And those things are extraordinarily popular. I don't care what you call it. I care what it does. And I don't know what this idea of socialism's taking over America. I have no idea what that means. Public colleges and making sure those public colleges are free in the same way that public schools are free. I don't think that's necessarily a radical idea. Those are things that people want. Those are things that the public, for the most part, is behind. And yet, if Sanders is pushing this, how is it radical if the public is on board for it in spades? I guess I'm making the point that it's not radical at all. It's radical to this bubble that these guys exist in. Donald Trump, if he's going to make that argument that Bernie Sanders is trying to bring Venezuela to the United States, good luck with that argument. Good luck with that argument. All right. I'm going to... Gardno, make sure you put the baby oil away after doing these Sanders videos. I will indeed put the baby oil away after doing these Sanders videos. I will indeed put the baby oil away. I would say this. Baby oil or not, Sanders is knocking this out of the park. He's knocking this out of the park. All right, I'm going to end this. I don't think I have another Sanders video. I might have one more for Gardno, just because Gardno making jokes about me being molested by Bernie Sanders. All right, I'll end it here. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Also, we've been having Patron Appreciation Days, and the last few have been amazing. We've been adding additional content to the Patreon pages, so patrons will have access to it. Mrs. Thomas joins me for the Patreon videos on Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern. It's a week in review. Essentially, we go through the stories that was of interest to us during the course of the week, and both of us kind of have back and forth about it. So the last few have been really good. It seems to be a really good dynamic, and people seem to love it and enjoy it. Those videos play at 1 p.m. live, and immediately after, they go under the Patreon page. So, what is this? John Hill, you missed the reparations gap. No, I haven't. I saw that part. My wife wants to do a video with me on the reparations thing, and I may use that part from Sanders for the reparations thing. And I'm not sure if that was a gaffe. Oh, God, that's a whole nother conversation. Fucking John Hill. That's a whole nother conversation. You're taking me into a rabbit hole. All right. I am going to do the reparations thing by itself, because that's one of those conversations that I'm finding interesting. Like, I cannot believe that this word is being uttered. Do you understand how shocking this is to me? Like, my perspective of America does not include any conversation about reparations. It just doesn't. Should it? Yes. Does it? No. I know that's somewhat of a distinction there, like a subjective distinction, but I'm of dual mind on this. It's somewhat nuanced. You will create havoc in the society. Like, in order to make the reparations thing work, depending on how it's being done or how it's administered, if you don't have society on your side, meaning if you don't have the majority of the white population on your side, or a good decent section of that white population on your side, you're going to lose. Like, not just lose, it's going to be something that's going to be attacked relentlessly. Whatever you want to do, you can do it, but you don't necessarily have to call it reparations. You're going to have problems by using the term. It's a loaded term. It's like UFOs. When people say UFOs, it can mean unidentified flying objects, technically, but in reality, ultimately, people think we're talking about aliens. John Hill, I told you Bernie has a black voter issue. He does not have a black voter issue. He does not have a black voter issue. Oh. All right, John Hill. I'm going to do the reparations video, not immediately after this. I have like 6 videos I want to do today. I'm going to do the reparations video. We could talk about it when that video comes up. X Factor, UBI will be reparations. Yes, that's what I mean. Like, I know some people are looking for things to be specific to blacks. It's not that I'm necessarily against that. I guess my issue here is, what havoc is this going to cause in the society itself? And can you achieve your ends in different ways? Because I guarantee you, there are going to be poor whites in society, because there are more whites on welfare than blacks. And they're going to say, why me? And whether or not they have any legitimacy in saying, why me? At the end of the day, it's not going to stop them from being alienated by what took place. Like, it's not, I don't think it's that simple. I mean, I look at affirmative action and the effect affirmative action had. People forgot that the point of affirmative action was to be this kind of balancing act for slavery and racism and those type of things. They attacked it relentlessly and attacked the people who were using it. Again, I need to be very clear. It's not that I'm against reparations. It all really boils down to how will it be administered. That's the end all and be all of it. If you can make it work, make it work. So I just think I think you would have to be politically savvy. Nobody's business. All right, let me end this. All right, guys. I'll see you momentarily. Bye-bye.